Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the 12-game NBA slate for today, for Wednesday, October the 25th, second day of the NBA regular season. We had a little two-game slate to start off the season. That was kind of like our appetizer. Now we've got the entree, man. We got the 12-gamer for Wednesday. As always, guys, in these DFS videos, we are going to go game by game. We are going to break down each one of these games, 12 games. We're going to go team by team and just kind of talk about some plays I like from each team, talk about salaries and stuff like that, just give you guys an early preview of this slate. Now, in Tuesday's video, that video wound up being a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I think it was like 34 minutes long. That was I did go a little bit more in depth on that two-game slate, talked about like bench guys that could be in play just because it was a small slate. And, on small slates, you can kind of, you can play like, second string guys, you can play like backup point guards and stuff like that. Well, on a 12-game slate, I don't think we're going to be playing a ton of bench guys. We're definitely going to be really focusing on key guys, starters, the guys that are going to get projected to get a good amount of minutes. But we will still talk about the projected starting lineup from each team. Probably won't go through and talk about every team's rotation just because I don't think that's super important on a 12-game slate. We more so want to be focusing on the main guys, the starters. But yeah, we'll go game by game, give you guys a preview of this 12-gamer. Before we do get started though, as always, if you guys do enjoy these DFS videos, if they do help you out, please hit that like button down below, guys. I do always appreciate the likes. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And if you guys are new to the channel and if you have never heard of PrizePicks, we are partnered up with PrizePicks. You guys can check out PrizePicks, linked down below in the description, or when you sign up for PrizePicks, make sure to use promo code NOAH, and you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. Now, if you don't know what PrizePicks is, they are a player prop site. They're more focused on player projections. As you can see, they have props already posted for Wednesday's games. There is a ton on the board right now, from a bunch of different categories. And PrizePicks is very simple, very easy to use. All you're doing is just picking more or less on a player's projection. It is that simple. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 6 picks. You can win up to 25x your money on PrizePicks. If you guys want to check them out, make sure to sign up and use that promo code NOAH. When you do sign up, you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. And as always, guys, I'll be sharing some plays I like for PrizePicks today. I'll be making a separate video. That'll probably go up after this video, and I'll talk about some props I like for this big Wednesday slate. If you guys want to check out that video, it will be posted on the channel later tonight. But let's go ahead and get to it, man. Let's go ahead and talk through this 12-game slate for Wednesday. Start off with the first game of the night, the Wizards and the Pacers. We'll start off with the Wizards first. So the Wizards' projected starting lineup should be Tyus Jones, Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, Denny Avdia, and Daniel Gafford. We'll start off with Poole at the top, who's 8,100. Poole's going to be, I think, a guy that's going to have a really good season, and he's going to be a good fantasy producer on this Wizards team. But Draftkings did do the right job here, pricing him up to 8,100. I think this is an appropriate price tag for Jordan Poole. Now, Poole, I do expect to have a lot of upside. I think he's going to be a really good scorer on this Wizards team. I think he'll be a guy that probably averages like 35 DraftKings points per game. But do I want to pay 8,100 for Poole? I don't think so. I think this price tag is about right for Poole. He's still tournament viable. It is a really good matchup against the Pacers. This should be a really fast-paced, high-scoring game. But I would reserve Poole for GBPs. I think the same could be said for Kyle Kuzma at 7K. He's not someone that I'm in love with at that price tag, but again, the matchup's so good, game environment's so good that you could definitely still go there. I do like these cheaper guys, though. Denny Avdia, Daniel Gafford, Tyus Jones. Denny Avdia, we saw last season be a really good point-per-minute player. Towards the end of the season, he was a guy that we were seeing priced like in the 6K, 7K range for this Washington team. Obviously, they have Jordan Poole now. They have Tyus Jones now. It's kind of a different team than what they were rolling out there last year. But I do expect Denny Avdia to have a big role. I expect him to play big minutes. He signed a big contract with Washington, and he's one of those guys that can do a little bit of everything when he's on the floor. He's a really good rebounder. At 5,300, I think Denny Avdia definitely has upside to pay off this price tag. If we project him to play 30-plus minutes, which I think he will play 30-plus minutes on a nightly basis for this Wizards team. And then Daniel Gafford should start at center, another good point-per-minute player in a good matchup against the Pacers. At 5,100, I think Gafford's a little bit too cheap on this slate. I think he looks like a pretty good value play. Not going to play like massive minutes, but Gafford's a good enough per-minute producer that even in 26 to 30 minutes, he can still give you a good score at his salary. And then Tyus Jones, probably one of my favorite value plays on this slate. 4,900, way too cheap for Tyus Jones here. We've seen Tyus Jones always be a good per-minute producer when he was on the Grizzlies, when he would start in place of Ja Morant. Now on this Wizards team, he's going to be their starting point guard. He's going to play 30-plus minutes a night. He's a fantasy point per minute player. He's way too cheap at 4,900. I think Tyus Jones should be like 6K, 6,500. We're definitely getting a discount on him. So those Wizards cheap guys, Avia, Gafford, Tyus Jones, I like all three of those guys quite a bit. Bench guys from Washington, I don't see a ton from the bench I'm really going to be looking to. If you want to take a shot on maybe like a DeLon Wright, a good permanent player who probably does get like 22 to 24 minutes, that's fine. But again, this is a 12-game slate, guys. There's going to be a ton of plays that stand out. I don't think we really need to get cute and be rostering a bunch of bench guys, like rotational guys. That's something you do on like smaller slates, on 12-game slates. You kind of want to focus on the guys that are really going to get a majority of the minutes, which I do expect to be the starters for Washington. Now, on the other side of this game with Indiana, with the Pacers, their starting lineup should be Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, Bruce Brown, Obi Toppin, and Miles Turner. I do expect Buddy Hield to come off the bench. Tyrese Halliburton at 9,100 I think is appropriately priced here. I do expect Halliburton to be a good fantasy producer once again this season. He was a great fantasy producer last season with the Pacers, averaged over 46 DraftKings points per game. Good matchup here against Washington, fast-paced, high-scoring game. No issue with Halliburton on the slate. I think he's firmly in play for GPPs. I think Miles Turner at 5,900 looks a little bit too cheap. We've seen Miles Turner be a good fantasy producer. Should probably play low 30s minutes a night on this Wizards team. On this Pacers team, and it's a good matchup against the Wizards. They were a team that did struggle defending centers last year. Daniel Gafford never been a good defender, so definitely like Miles Turner here at 5,900. Benedict Mathurin at 5,400 I think is also a fine play. We saw Benedict Mathurin take on a really big role to end the season last year for Indiana. Obviously, that was kind of due to some injuries, and Indiana didn't really have anything to play for. But I do expect Mathurin to still have a big role for this team. I expect him to play low to mid 30s minutes a night. I think at 5,400 he's a fine option as well. There's just so many guys that are like $1,000 too cheap. DraftKings I think the pricing is definitely soft early on in the season. Guys are going to be underpriced, and you're going to see that for a lot of players. There's going to be a lot of guys that I think are like $1,000 to $1,500 too cheap, and you could definitely say like Mathurin's too cheap here. Bruce Brown, obviously on a new team, hard to kind of project how we're going to see Bruce Brown produce, but he's typically been a strong fantasy point per minute player. He typically averages around a fantasy point per minute, and on this Pacers team, I would expect him to play about 30 minutes a night, maybe more. At 5,200, I think he's priced about right, but I don't hate Bruce Brown on this slate. I still think he's fine. And I do want to talk about Obi Toppin. DraftKings definitely messed up here, leaving Obi Toppin at 3K. Obi Toppin was productive last season with the Knicks towards the end of the year. He was getting a lot of playing time and was a really strong producer. And I know during the preseason he had some big games with the Pacers as well. He's expected to start. He's expected to get like close to 30 minutes a night. He's the stone minimum 3K. I think Toppin's going to be probably one of the best value plays on this slate. Really tough guy to avoid at his 3K price tag. So he looks really, really good at 3K, power forward and center eligible. And then off the bench for the Pacers, I don't love a ton off the bench for Indiana. I don't really want to go to Buddy Hield. He feels priced about right. Same with TJ McConnell. Same with Andrew Nembhard. It's really just going to be focusing on the starters here. And I think that's it for that game. So let's move on to the next game, Atlanta and Charlotte. This is another game that should be a good fantasy game, good game environment. On the Atlanta side, their starting lineup should be Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Sadiq Bey, DeAndre Hunter, and Clint Capella. If we're looking at the Hawks in this spot, it's a good matchup against Charlotte. Charlotte's a team that plays fast, doesn't play any defense. Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, both feel priced correctly on this slate, but I think because the matchup is so good, I think these guys are fine for GBPs. If I had to choose between one of Trae or DeJounte, I would prefer to go to Trae. I think Trae just gives you a higher ceiling. He also he's shown a higher floor as well. Clint Capella is in a great matchup here against Charlotte. Charlotte was a team last season that gave up a ton of fantasy points to centers. I don't think really anything's going to change this season. The only concern with Capella is that he does have a really good backup behind him and Onyeka Okongwu. And with Okongwu being a really good backup, you're only going to see Capella play like 26, 28 minutes. Rarely do you see Capella play like 35, 36 minutes. So that alone kind of keeps Capella as like a tournament play. He's never someone that I love going to in cash games unless the price tag's right. And at 6K, I think the price tag is where it should be. It's not like he's glaringly underpriced. But the matchup, again, is so good that I would not be surprised to see Capella or Okongwu, both those guys, be really productive in the minutes they do get. And then Sadiq Bey, I think, is going to have a pretty big role for Atlanta. Without John Collins, he should start at the 3 or the 4. And he's probably going to play close to 30 minutes a night, if not more than that. Saddiq Bey did show to be a guy that can be productive when given minutes, and there's a lot of minutes available in that front court without John Collins. So I don't mind Saddiq Bey as a value play at 5K. I think he's fine to go to. DeAndre Hunter, I never really get excited to roster on this slate. I'm not going to go there. Bogdan coming off the bench, I'm not super interested in at 5,300. The rest of the Hawks, I don't have a ton of interest in. It's really Trey and Saddiq Bey are the two guys I like most here. And then the centers are in a great matchup. The only thing I hate about the Atlanta centers is that they're just going to split the minutes, and it's just always tough to tell which guy's going to be the one that puts up the big game. It could be Capella here. Maybe Okongwu is really productive in the minutes he gets. If you want to take a shot on one of those Atlanta centers, preferably Capella. I don't hate it in GBPs. But let's move on to the other side of this game with Charlotte. And for Charlotte, their projected starting lineup should be LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, and Mark Williams. I think Brandon Miller will probably come off the bench. I'm pretty sure he was coming off the bench in preseason. And then they'll have like Nick Richards will back up Williams and the rest of their bench. But focusing on the starters specifically, it is a decent matchup here against Atlanta. Again, another fast-paced, high-scoring game. But I think these Charlotte guys are all priced correctly. LaMelo's almost 10K. That feels where he's priced where he definitely should be. Terry Rozier is 7,300. That price feels correct to me. PJ Washington and Gordon Hayward. Neither one of those guys are guys that have like massive upside. And at 5,700, 5,500, they both feel priced about right. And then Mark Williams, he has shown the ability to be a really productive, permanent producer when he does get opportunity. But it's kind of similar to the Atlanta situation. Mark Williams does have a decent backup behind him, and Nick Richards, who they will split the center minutes with. So rarely do you see Mark Williams play like 35, 36 minutes. At most, he's going to get like 30 minutes just because they do want to play Nick Richards. So it's one of those things where like if Mark Williams projected to play more than 26 minutes, I'd like him, but I don't see him playing more than like 26, 28 minutes. And on a 12-game slate, I just don't know if that's going to be enough to want to go there at his price tag. If I had to play anyone on Charlotte, I think he'd be my favorite play. Obviously, LaMelo is always in play. I think that $9,900 price tag makes LaMelo a tough guy to pay up for. But there is plenty of value on the slate. You're going to be able to spend up for whoever you want to. So if you want to go to LaMelo, that's fine. But in general, I don't love this Charlotte team. Off the bench, I don't love a ton. Brandon Miller, he's probably going to have a good role off the bench, but at 5,400, he does feel priced where he should be. Don't think he's a guy that I'm really going to go to on this slate. Same with Nick Richards and the rest of these guys from Charlotte. So that's really it for the Hornets. Let's move on to the next game, guys. Again, we have a 12-game slate, so I'm going to try and go as quick as I can through these games and still give you guys some good information. But for Houston, looking at the Rockets first here, projected starting lineup for the Rockets should be Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun. If we're looking at the Rockets and the price tags for these guys, I think the guys that stand out the most to me, definitely my favorite play on Houston is Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith, I think, is someone that's poised to have a really big year. We saw him kind of break out last season. He started to really put up some big games, started to produce as a scorer and on the glass. And he's going to have an opportunity to put up big numbers here with this Houston team. This Houston team, they want to be developing these young guys. I think Jabari Smith's going to play big minutes on a nightly basis. He's only 5,600. Like, he's one of these guys that I think is definitely $1,000 to $1,500 too cheap. Like, Jabari Smith should be 6,600, not 5,600. So he's my favorite play on Houston by far. Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, Sengun, none of these guys I love. I think Sengun, always a guy you can look to in GBPs just because he has so much upside. He's a really good permanent producer. Orlando, though, last season I know was kind of a tough matchup for centers. Sengun's also, he can be a headache to roster sometimes in DFS because he does get in foul trouble a lot, which obviously, that's going to cut into his minutes if he gets in foul trouble. But he's a fine tournament play. Fred VanVleet, I think, is going to have a pretty big role on this Rockets team as kind of their lead go-to guy, their number one scorer. At 8,200, I think he does feel priced about right, though. And then the rest of the Rockets, if you want to go to Amen Thompson coming off the bench, he's fine. These rookies coming off the bench, they do have potential to see more minutes than maybe you might project just because they are number one picks. Amen Thompson was a number one draft pick for Houston. At 5,400, he feels priced where he should be. I don't think he's like a glaring value on this slate. Him and Brandon Miller, I think, are like pretty similar plays. I don't have a strong take when it comes to any of these rookies. If you want to play them, you can. I don't think I'm going to be going to many of these guys, though. I'm really going to try and focus on the starters and the guys that are going to get like the majority of the minutes. It's hard to really tell how many minutes some of these rookies are going to play coming off the bench. The rest of the Houston bench guys, I don't have a ton of interest in. Definitely my favorite play by far on the Rockets here is Jabari Smith. I think Jabari Smith is way underpriced on this slate. But moving on to the other side of the game, looking on the other side with Orlando. So the Magic here should have the same starting lineup that they ran out last season. Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. I don't see a ton of love on this Orlando team. It is a good matchup here against Houston. Houston was like one of the worst defensive teams last season. They might be a little bit better defensively this year. They do have Dylan Brooks who can defend. So maybe their defense will be better this season, but I don't even love any of these Orlando guys. Like Paolo is 8,900. I'm not paying 8,900 for Paolo on this slate. Wendell Carter Jr. feels priced where he should be. Franz Wagner, I know, is someone that a lot of people are high on coming into the season. They say Franz Wagner could be a guy that could break out this year, and he might be. But I think at 6,100 on this slate, he feels priced where he should be. Same with Markelle Fultz. Jalen Suggs is cheap. If you want to go to him, I do expect him to start at shooting guard. He's only 4,800. He's an okay value play, but I think there are guys I like more for value on this slate. This Orlando team, they ran a pretty deep rotation last season. I think they're going to be a team that runs a deep rotation again this year. And I don't think they're going to be a team we really target a ton in DFS just because they have a lot of guys they're probably going to give minutes to. It's just going to be a tough team to really project, I think. On this slate specifically, I don't love a ton on Orlando. If I had to play anyone from this team, I think my favorite play probably would be Franz Wagner. But again, not a ton I love from the Magic. So let's move on to the next game, Boston and the Knicks. This is going to be a game we definitely fly through because there's not a ton to like in this one. It's a slow pace. It's going to be probably a lower scoring game. Starting off on the Boston side, their projected starting lineup should be Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, I'd assume start, but it could be Al Horford. But it definitely, we know 4 of the 5 starters are going to be Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, and Drew Holiday. The 5th starter could be Derek White. It could be Al Horford. I'm just going to assume it's Derek White. That's what Underdog has right now. Looking at this Celtics team, I think everyone's priced about right besides Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday is definitely coming in underpriced here. Now, we don't really know what kind of roles Drew Holiday's going to have. Obviously, he's playing on a new team. He's playing with high-usage guys, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. But 6,100, I mean, this is not a price tag that we would normally see Drew Holiday priced at. I mean, Drew Holiday is still a fantasy point-per-minute player that's going to play 34, 35 minutes. Despite the tough matchup, despite the slow-paced game, this is definitely way too cheap of a price tag for Drew Holiday. I think at 6,100, he stands out as a really strong play. He is by far my favorite play on the Celtics. Not a ton of interest in Derek White at his price tag. I would just much rather play Holiday. Tatum and Brown, where they're priced at, neither one I love here. Porzingis at his price tag, I think he feels priced about right. Again, it's a team that they got 4 guys that are really going to dominate usage. You're not going to really be considering anyone, I don't think, on the Celtics bench. If you're going to play anyone on the Celtics, it's probably going to be one of the big 4. And if I had to pick one to play when you factor in price tag, I think Drew is my favorite at 6,100. But now let's talk about the other side of this game with the Knicks. And looking at the Knicks here, their starting lineup should be the same starting lineup they had last season. It should be Jalen Brunson, Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. I don't really like much on this Knicks team. It's a very tough matchup here against the Celtics. I think the Celtics are probably going to be one of, if not the best defensive team in the league this season. It's a tough team to really go up against. It's a team that's probably going to play slow as well. Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle are both guys that offer a lot of upside, and they can put up big games even in tough matchups. If you want to play them on this slate, you're going to get them at really low ownership, I would assume. But neither one I'm in love with. RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Mitchell Robinson, none of these guys I really like from the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks are kind of another team. Like, they have a lot of guys that they can give minutes to. Even though Tibbs does typically play tight rotations and play his starters big minutes, I could see him running kind of a deeper rotation early on in the season just because they do have some guys that they have some bench depth, I guess you could say. You're going to get minutes from Hart. You're going to get minutes from Quickley off the bench. DiVincenzo's a new addition who's probably going to get minutes off the bench. Hartenstein's going to get some minutes. Maybe they play Fournier some minutes here. Yeah, I just don't really know when it comes to this Knicks team. I don't really like much here. This is definitely, besides Drew Holiday, I think this is like one of the least appealing games on the slate. But I definitely think Drew Holiday is a good play in this game because he is underpriced. But let's move on to the next game, Minnesota and Toronto. So looking at the Timberwolves here, their projected starting lineup, it should be Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Karl-Anthony Towns, and then I guess it'll be Kyle Anderson. Normally, Jaden McDaniels would probably start, but he is out for today. So it'll probably be either Kyle Anderson or Troy Brown who starts in place of Jaden McDaniels, one of those two. If Anderson starts, I think at 5,700, he's fine, but I wouldn't really love him. If Troy Brown does start, he's only 3,900. he's an okay value play. But again, this Minnesota team, they've got high usage guys like Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns that are really going to dominate usage when they're on the floor. So even if like Troy Brown starts, how productive is he going to be playing alongside Edwards and Towns? Probably not that productive. If I'm going to play anyone on Minnesota, I think I would just look to the stars here, Cat and Ant. Ant, I think, is a guy that's going to have a big season. He's going to have a big role for this Timberwolves team. But man, DraftKings, they got him priced at $9,600. We're not getting like a big discount here on Ant. I think if Ant was like $8,600, I'd like him a lot more. At $9,600, it is kind of tough to pay this price tag for him. But if I was going to click anyone on Minnesota, Ant would probably be my favorite play. But this is another team I just don't have a ton of interest in. I'm not really going to be looking at anyone off the bench for Minnesota. So let's move on to the other side of this game with Toronto. For Toronto, their projected starting lineup, it should be Dennis Schroeder, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and Jakob Poeltl. There are some guys from Toronto I like here. Pascal Siakam, another guy that I think is going to have a really big role. No Fred VanVleet anymore, so he's going to be a guy that really dominates usage. But $10,100, man, we're paying the premium for Siakam. So at that price tag, not a ton of interest in Siakam, although I do expect him to have a big role and play big minutes. I do like some of these mid-range guys, though, from Toronto. Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, and Dennis Schroeder. Specifically, Poeltl and Schroeder, I think, look pretty solid. Poeltl, we know, is a really good point-per-minute player. He's a guy that typically plays big minutes. During the postseason, we did see him have some big-minute games. We'll have to see how Toronto runs their rotations this year without Nick Nurse. But I would expect most nights Poeltl plays around 30 minutes, and he is someone that will average well over a fantasy point per minute. At only $5,900, I do like Poeltl as a center option today in GBPs. And then Dennis Schroeder, I think at $5,300 looks like a pretty solid value. Schroeder, another guy that's typically been a solid point per minute player. On this Raptors team, I think he should have plenty of opportunity, even though usage probably will be dominated by Siakam. You're still going to have some opportunity for Schroeder. He's only $5,300. He should start, play about 30 minutes. He's definitely someone I do like on this slate as kind of a cheaper point guard option. If we're looking for other values on Toronto, I don't think there's anyone else I'm considering here. Not going to any of these guys off the bench. Definitely my favorite plays on Toronto are probably Poeltl and Schroeder. Even Scotty Barnes at $6,700, I don't mind. I think Scotty Barnes is another guy that we could see have a big year. Just without Fred VanVleet, he could have the opportunity to handle the ball more. And Scotty Barnes is one of those guys that does do everything when he's on the floor. He can score, he can rebound, he can get assists, and he can get defensive stats. I wish Siakam was cheaper because I do like Siakam a lot, but 10-1 is tough to pay. But the rest of these Raptors starters, I think, are viable. Barnes, Schroeder, and Poeltl, specifically those three I like. Let's move on to the next game, Cleveland and Brooklyn. Another game I don't think we're going to spend a ton of time on. This is going to be another kind of slow-paced, lower-scoring game. On the Cleveland side, we do have some injury news to monitor here. I think Darius Garland is questionable for this game. Yeah, Darius Garland is questionable. I would assume he probably plays here. I'd be surprised if he misses their opening game. Obviously, if Darius Garland doesn't play, that's a boost for Donovan Mitchell. That's a boost for Karis LeVert. Mitchell at $9,400 would be viable, but at that price tag, I'm not like running to roster Mitchell. I think LeVert, though, at $4,900 would be a pretty good value play if Garland did get ruled out. And then we do need to, say that Jared Allen is out, and I forgot to mention the Cavs projected starting lineup. It should be Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, assuming Garland plays, Garland, Mitchell, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and then I don't know who the fifth starter will be in place of Jared Allen. They could start Evan Mobley at the 5, and then maybe move in like Karis LeVert, maybe move in Okoro to the starting lineup, or they could go big, start Evan Mobley at the 4, and then start I forgot who their backup center was. They could start like Tristan Thompson at the 5 or Damian Jones at the 5. So we'll have to see what Cleveland does with their starting lineup. I definitely think, though, if Garland's out, Mitchell looks okay. LeVert's a good value. If Garland plays, I don't really like Mitchell or Garland a ton at their price tags. But Evan Mobley, I do like a lot. I think Evan Mobley, without Jared Allen here, is definitely gets a boost. I would expect Mobley to start at center. We could maybe see something different, but I think Mobley is going to start at center. And Mobley is a strong point per minute player. His point per minute production should be even better if he does start at center. There's just an opportunity for him to get more rebounds, playing around the glass more. Mobley's a good rebounder to begin with. He's a guy that can score, and he's a really good shot blocker. He's only $6,300, power forward and center eligible. Without Jared Allen today, I do like Evan Mobley quite a bit. He's my favorite play by far on Cleveland. Even though Max Strus is probably going to start, I don't think at $4,500 he's going to be a guy that I really look to. I think he's appropriately priced, for the upside that he has. Not typically a super high upside player. The Cleveland bench guys, I don't have a ton of interest in. Emoni Bates, rookie, a guy that could maybe have some big games coming off the bench, but on this slate, I just don't think I'm going to go there. The rest of these bench guys from Cleveland, I'm not really on. So that'll do it for that game, or for the Cleveland side of that game. Let's move on to Brooklyn now. And looking at the Nets here, their projected starting lineup, it should be Ben Simmons, Spencer Dinwiddie, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Nick Claxton. I know the matchup here against Cleveland is not the greatest, but there are a couple guys on this Brooklyn team I do have some interest in. I think Mikal and Dinwiddie are priced where they should be, but I think Nick Claxton at 5,900 is an okay option here. It's not the greatest matchup by any means. It's honestly a really tough matchup against Evan Mobley, who's a great defender. But Claxton is a strong point per minute player, and if he does see 30 plus minutes as a starter, I think he's got upside to pay off this $5,900 price tag. I don't mind going to Claxton here, and I actually like Ben Simmons on this slate. We saw Ben Simmons in the preseason, look a little bit better. He was more, I don't want to say aggressive, but he was able to contribute in all categories like the Ben Simmons of old. When Ben Simmons was at his best, he was a guy that would get triple doubles. He was a guy that would contribute in all categories. Ben Simmons is one of those guys that can do that. He can get you 7, 8, 9 points, 7, 8, 9 rebounds, 8, 9 assists, couple blocks, couple steals. Like, he's kind of like a Draymond Green. 5,900 for Ben Simmons. I think now that he is starting, now that he's looks to be back to full strength, fully healthy, I actually do like Ben Simmons on this slate. He's point guard, small forward on Draftkings, so he's a guy that will be really easy to roster. You can fit him in multiple positions. He's probably my favorite play on Brooklyn. I know people probably don't want to play Ben Simmons. They have this narrative around Ben Simmons that he just sucks. I don't buy into that. I think Ben Simmons is still someone that can be relevant in fantasy. And at his price tag today, I think he is a pretty solid option at 5,900. But that's really it for Brooklyn. I don't see myself going to anyone else on Brooklyn. So let's move on to the next game, guys. We still got plenty more games to go over. Going to try and get through these quickly. I know we've already been recording for like over 20 minutes, so I got to get through these games quick. For Detroit today, this is probably going to be a team I just full fade on this slate. It's a really tough matchup against Miami. Projected starting lineup for Detroit should be Cade Cunningham. Killian Hayes, I think, will start, but it could be Jaden Ivey. But either way, I think it'll be Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes. It'll probably be, I don't know who the third starter will be. They're probably going to go double big with, or it should be Azar Thompson. My fault. I completely forgot about him. So it should be Azar Thompson starting for Bojan, who's out right now. So Cade Cunningham, either one of Jaden Ivey or Killian Hayes probably starts at the 2. Azar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and Jaren Duran. So those should be the 5 starters for Detroit. Again, this is a really tough matchup against Miami. These Detroit guys all feel priced where they should be. If I had to pick anyone on Detroit to play, maybe Jalen Duran would be my favorite option just because he is a strong point per minute player. But this is a super tough matchup against Miami. Miami was one of the worst matchups for centers last season. It's going to be hard for Duran to put up like big time upside in this spot because Bam is such a good defender. But 4,800 for Duran is cheap for a guy that typically averages over a fantasy point per minute. I don't love really anyone on Detroit though today. I think, again, if I had to play anyone here, probably Jalen Duran. He would be my favorite play. On the Miami side though, much better matchup for these guys. We know Detroit last season was one of the worst defensive teams in the league. I don't think much is going to change this year. Projected starting lineup for Miami should be Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, and Kevin Love. I don't see a ton of like clear standout plays on Miami, but I think there are some guys you can go to in GBP today. Don't really like Lowry or Love, but I think the other 3 starters, Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler Hero, I think all are viable. Jimmy's 8,800, Bam is 7,900, Hero is 6,300. I think of those 3, Hero is probably my favorite. We should expect Hero to have a pretty big role here. Obviously, when he's playing with Bam, with Jimmy, he's kind of like the third option on the team, but he's still a guy that can play big minutes. He's a guy that can really succeed in good matchups and easy matchups, and I think this is one of those easy matchups that Hero can definitely take advantage of going up against the Pistons, who are a bad defensive team. So I do like some Tyler Hero today. Don't mind Jimmy or Bam either. The rest of Miami, though, I don't really have a ton of interest in. So let's go ahead and move on to the next game, the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. We'll start off on the Pelicans side. So for the Pelicans, their projected starting lineup, it should be CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas, Zion Williamson, and Herbert Jones. If we're looking at the Pelican starters here, those 5 guys, another team where I don't see a ton that I love, Zion, going to be fun to watch him again. He's back, but at 9,700, I think Zion's priced where he should be. Ingram and CJ obviously they're not going to have as big of roles with Zion back, so I think Ingram and CJ both feel priced about right. Jonas Valanciunas, we know is a guy that has a lot of upside, and he's a good point per minute player, but you never know how many minutes Jonas Valanciunas is going to play. Some nights he'll play 30, some nights he'll play 20. It's just really hard to predict the minutes for J-Val, but that does always make him someone you can go to in GBPs. Really no interest in Herb Jones, no interest in any bench guys from the Pelicans. So Pelicans, honestly, not a team I have a ton of interest in. I'm excited to watch the Pelicans again. I'm excited to watch Zion, but am I going to be playing Zion on Draftkings at almost 10K? I don't think so. Now on the other side with Memphis definitely looks a little bit different. No Ja Morant, obviously, right now, who's dealing with suspension. So we have Marcus Smart, who should be starting in place of Ja, and the rest of the starting lineup should be Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Zaire Williams, I'd assume starts, Jaren Jackson Jr., and then Xavier Tillman. Now, without Ja Morant right now, you're going to see really big roles for both Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. We saw Bane and Triple J really benefit when Ja was out last season. So Bane and Triple J, like both those guys a ton here. I think they're way too cheap. I think Bane should be $8,400. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. should be $7,600. Both these guys were like $1,000 too cheap. Marcus Smart feels priced about where he should be. Zaire Williams, I think, is an okay value play at 4K. Xavier Tillman, I don't mind for value. We've seen Xavier Tillman be a good point per minute player. His minutes should be pretty secure this season with Steven Adams out at 5K. I definitely think Xavier Tillman's an okay value play. No Santi Aldama either. I think does help Tillman a little bit. No bench guys, though, I'm really looking to from Memphis, but I definitely like Bane, Triple J, and Tillman here. And if you want to go to Zaire Williams as a value, assuming he starts, I don't hate that either. But let's move on to the next game, OKC and Chicago. So for OKC, this is another team that's going to be really fun to watch this year. Fully healthy OKC team coming into this year. Projected starting lineup should be SGA, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, J-Dub, I should say, Lou Dort, and Chet Holmgren. If we're looking at the price tags on these OKC guys, I don't have a ton of interest in anyone on OKC at their prices. SGA's $10,500. That feels a little bit overpriced for SGA. I think he should be like $9,500 when this team's fully healthy. Same with Giddey at $7,500. That feels about right. Chet Holmgren, I think at $6,500 could be kind of interesting here. He does have power forward and center eligibility on DraftKings, so he's kind of easy to roster. I do expect Chet to be a pretty solid per-minute producer. He's a guy that can score, he can rebound, and he's a guy that can block shots as well. He can do everything when he's on the floor. He's probably my favorite play on OKC if I had to play anyone here. And then I don't mind J-Dub either. Lou Dort I don't have any interest in, but J-Dub, Chet Holmgren I do have some interest in. Giddey and SGA, where they're priced at, they feel priced where they should be. No one on OKC's bench I'm really going to be looking to. And on the other side here with the Bulls, their projected starting lineup should be Kobe White, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. I'd assume Patrick Williams starts at the 4, and then Nikola Vucevic. This Chicago team, it was kind of this thing we talked about last year was with Chicago, if you're ever going to play anyone on the Bulls, it's either going to be DeRozan, Vooch, or LaVine. Rarely did I play anyone else on Chicago besides those three guys. I think for this slate specifically, there is a fourth option that I do have interest in, and that is Kobe White. I'm expecting Kobe White to start at point guard, and we've seen Kobe White be someone that can produce when he does get minutes. And I would assume with him starting at point guard, he probably does play about 30 minutes a night. He does have good backups behind him. Ayo Dosunmu, Alex Caruso, those are two guys that can definitely eat into his minutes. But as a starter, I think he'll kind of get the first crack at the point guard minutes. And if Kobe White does come out of the gate, play really well, you could definitely see 30+ minutes. And that's good for a guy at 4,600. So I actually do like Kobe White as a value option. And then DeRozan, Vooch, LaVine, I think are all a little bit underpriced here. I think they're all $1,000 too cheap. It's a good matchup. OKC, I expect, will be one of the faster-paced teams in the league this season. OKC was a really fast-paced team last season. If we're talking about individual matchups, I think the matchup is definitely best for Vooch. Vooch is going to have a big size, at least weight. He's going to have a big weight advantage against Chet Holmgren. Holmgren's tall, but he's not super. He's not very built. He's a skinny guy. So I think Vooch could definitely just kind of bully Chet down in the paint. We'll have to see. I do like Vooch, though, in this matchup. OKC was a good matchup for centers last season. We'll have to see if that winds up being the case again this season. At 6,900, Vooch is very interesting to me. He's probably my favorite play on Chicago, followed by LaVine, followed by DeRozan. But again, the big three from the Bulls, these guys all feel a little bit too cheap today. I think they're all pretty strong options. I don't think I would play two of them together, or three. Definitely would not play all three, but maybe you could play two of them together. I probably would limit it to one, though, of these three if I was going to play any of them. And again, I think Vooch is my favorite. But that's it for the Bulls. Let's move on to the next game. Sacramento and Utah. Got 3 more games to go, guys, so we're going to get through these quickly. On the Sacramento side, projected starting lineup for the Kings should be De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. If we're looking at anyone on Sacramento today, yeah, I want to say like Sabonis and Fox are going to be the two guys I look to. Sabonis is 10,300, which I think is the right price tag for him. Fox, you could argue, is a little bit too cheap. You know, Fox, I think, probably should be like in the low 9Ks. I think 8,700 might be a little bit too cheap for him. This is another one of the better game environments on this slate. Two teams that do play fast. So I think there's some upside in this game for some of these guys like Sabonis and Fox. But like Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray, Malik Monk, Harrison Barnes on a 12-game slate, I don't think I'm really going to any of these guys. I don't think I'm considering anyone off the bench from Sacramento. If I was going to play anyone here, it would be Sabonis or Fox. I think Fox, when you factor in price tags, probably my favorite from Sacramento. And then on the Utah side, projected starting lineup for Utah should be Jordan Clarkson, Talen Horton-Tucker, Lauri Markkanen, and then I assume the fourth starter will be John Collins, fifth starter will be Walker Kessler. So just to repeat that, starting lineup should be, at least what Underdog has, is starting lineup should be Jordan Clarkson, THT, Walker Kessler, John Collins, and Walker Kessler. So I do expect Chris Dunn to come off the bench. I assume Kelly Olynyk will come off the bench. Colin Sexton will come off the bench. After that, it's I don't know who's after that. I don't think them on a 12-game slate really have to care about the 9th, 10th man coming off the bench. We're really going to be focusing on the starters. And looking at the starters for Utah, this is a good matchup against Sacramento. This is a really good game environment. Lauri Markkanen is 9,300, so I don't think I'm going to get to Lauri Markkanen at that price tag. But Jordan Clarkson, Walker Kessler, THT, assuming he starts, those three guys I like a lot. I think Jordan Clarkson is going to have a big role here. I mean, no Mike Conley anymore, so he's obviously going to be kind of the primary ball handler for this Utah team. No Donovan Mitchell either. He's going to be the guy really out there, taking a lot of the shots, dominating the usage. Him and Lauri Markkanen. I think 6,200 is too cheap for Jordan Clarkson here. I think he should be like 7,200. So I like Jordan Clarkson quite a bit. I think Walker Kessler is also a little bit too cheap at 5,600. A really good point per minute player. Probably not the best matchup overall for Kessler, but if we're getting like 30-plus minutes from Kessler at this price tag, he definitely stands out as a strong option. And then I do like THT as well. If THT starts, I think at 4,500, he's a pretty good value play. Shooting guard and small forward eligibility. Another guy that when he gets minutes, he can produce. And this Jazz team, they don't have a ton of bench depth outside of the three guys I mentioned. Outside of Olynyk, Sexton, and Chris Dunn, it's kind of slim pickings. I mean, they'll probably give Agbaji some minutes, maybe Samanik, maybe Fontecchio, but I don't think they want to play those guys a ton. So I think you will definitely see probably close to 30-plus minutes from all the starters. And I definitely think Clarkson, Kessler, and THT, assuming THT starts. I think all three of those guys look very solid here. But let's move on to the next game, Dallas and San Antonio. So some big news we're going to have to monitor for this slate is the status of Luka Doncic. Luka is questionable for this game. Reported, though, that he has no soreness. He's going to practice on Tuesday, so I am expecting Luka to play. I would be really surprised if he doesn't play here. If Luka plays, we know the deal with his Dallas team. The usage is going to be dominated by Luka and Kyrie Irving, and it's a great matchup against San Antonio. San Antonio was a horrible defensive team last year. San Antonio also played at a fast pace. The price tags on Luka and Kyrie, though, do feel about right. I still think Luka, though, is probably one of the best pay-up options on this slate, just from a raw points perspective. He's going to project the highest out of anyone. 11K is still, you could argue that's too cheap for Luka. We typically see Luka priced around 12K. And with the pricing being soft today, with there being plenty of value, you're going to be able to pay up for Luka or whoever you want to pay up for. I think Luka is definitely one of the stronger, safer pay-up options, and I think he definitely has probably the most upside out of anyone on the slate. Kyrie at 10,200, I'm not as interested in. I would just rather get up to Luka. Obviously, if Luka doesn't play by some chance, Kyrie would look really good, but I think for now we have to assume Luka's playing. I forgot to mention projected starting lineup for the Mavericks should be Luka, Kyrie. It should be Seth Curry starting at the 3, Derek Lively starting at the 5, Grant Williams at the 4. So to repeat that, starting lineup for the Mavs should be Luka, Kyrie, Seth Curry, Grant Williams, and Derek Lively. We'll have to see. I'm not 100% confident on that. I think Underdog, I can't remember who they have starting at the 3. I know definitely it's going to be Luka, Kyrie as the 2 guards. It's going to be Grant Williams at the 4, Derek Lively at the 5. They have, let's see, go to Dallas' starting lineup. They have Josh Green as the projected small forward, so that's probably right. So it'll probably be Josh Green. So scratch what I just said. Projected starting lineup for the Mavericks should be Luka, Kyrie, Josh Green, Grant Williams, and Derek Lively. We talked about Luka and Kyrie. I don't think there's really any other starters I'm looking to on Dallas. I just think, man, Luka and Kyrie are going to dominate the usage when they're out there, that it's really going to be hard for guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Dante Exum, any of these guys, Steph Curry, Grant Williams, to really be relevant for DFS. Maybe Grant Williams at 3,900 I could see going to, but Grant Williams is a low usage player, and playing with Kyrie and Luka, you don't really expect much usage for Grant Williams, so I don't think he's really going to be fantasy relevant this season. He is cheap though if you want to go there. Now on the San Antonio side, looking at the Spurs here, their projected starting lineup is going to be interesting. I think they're going to be starting Jeremy Sohan at point guard. I think that's already come out and it's confirmed. So Jeremy Sohan's going to start at point guard, followed by Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, and then Zach Collins. Looking at San Antonio here, there's two guys that I do like quite a bit on San Antonio, Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sohan. I think Jeremy Sohan is another really, really good value play on the slate. We've seen Sohan be a really good point per minute player. Maybe with playing alongside Wembanyama this year, maybe his usage will take a hit. Maybe he won't be as productive on a point per minute basis. But given that he's going to be starting at point guard, he's going to be handling the ball a lot. That definitely makes Sohan stand out as a good value play, and he's point guard, small forward eligible, so he's got some flexibility with how you roster him. Sohan's probably my favorite play on the Spurs today. Definitely one of my favorite values as well. But I do like Wembanyama quite a bit. I think DraftKings did it right, pricing him at 8,500. I think this is an appropriate price tag for Wembanyama. I would expect him to be like I would expect him to average around 40 DraftKings points per game. I think he's going to be typically a guy that puts up around 40 DK points, but you'll definitely see him probably pop off and put up like 50, 55 at times. I mean, we know Wembanyama is one of the best prospects ever. He's a guy that's going to just do everything when he's out there, score, rebound. He's a great shot blocker, great defender. He's going to be a stat sheet stuffer. I think 8,500 is an appropriate price tag for him, but I'm definitely interested in Wembanyama here. I think at 8,500 he is still firmly in play, but I really like Jeremy Sohan at 4,700, and then Keldon, Devin Vassell, Zach Collins. At their price tags, none of them look like great options to me. I'm not super interested in those guys, but let's go ahead and talk about the last game of the night, guys. We've been going for over 40 minutes, so let's try and wrap up this video here. Portland and the Clippers. We'll start off on the Portland side. So projected starting lineup for the Blazers should be Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton. I'm expecting Malcolm Brogdon to come off the bench. I'm expecting Robert Williams to come off the bench, expecting Shaedon Sharpe to come off the bench. If we're looking at this Portland team, I think there's a few guys that I think are in play here. Anthony Simons, obviously no longer playing with Damian Lillard. I think we can expect a big role for Anthony Simons this season. I think this Portland team actually, I don't think they're going to be like complete shit. I think they're actually going to be better than people expect. I think they're going to be able to keep games competitive as well. They don't have like the worst roster, so I kind of like them to keep this game close. I think Simon's going to play big minutes on a nightly basis, and he's going to have big usage with Dame no longer on the team. So I do like Simons at 6,700. Grant and Ayton, I think, are fine plays. Neither one of them I love at their price tags. Brogdon coming off the bench is okay. Don't love him. Scoot Henderson at 5,800 should start at point guard. I think he's going to have a pretty big role. I think at 5,800, though, he does feel appropriately priced. Not a guy that I would be running to roster at that price tag. And then like Robert Williams, Shaedon Sharpe, there's no one else I'm considering on Portland, but I do like Anthony Simons here. He's probably my favorite play on the Blazers. And then on the Clippers side, starting lineup for the Clippers, we definitely know we're going to get Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and Ivica Zubac in the starting lineup. I was expecting Terrence Mann to start, but Terrence Mann is out for this game, so it probably will either be Nicholas Batum, Marcus Morris, probably one of those two guys, maybe Covington, that starts in place of Terrence Mann. I don't think we're really going to be looking to much value here from the Clippers, but we definitely need to talk about the main guys, PG, Kawhi, and Westbrook. PG and Kawhi are both priced over 9K. If I had to choose one of the two Clippers bigs, like their big two, I would rather go to Kawhi. I typically prefer Kawhi over PG. He's typically been a better per-minute producer than PG has been, and he's coming in at a little bit of a discount as well. So I like Kawhi the most there. And I think Westbrook at 6,500 looks really solid. I think Westbrook is definitely too cheap here. Westbrook's another guy that I think is like $1,000 too cheap on this slate. I think he fits into that same bill with a guy like Drew Holiday as just one of these like underpriced mid-range guards. Westbrook, even playing with PG and Kawhi, he has still shown the ability to be a decent point per minute player. He still should average probably around a fantasy point per minute. I would expect Westbrook to play 30 plus minutes a night. I know there were some games last season where he saw his minutes get cut, but I don't think that's going to be the case this season. I think his role's pretty secure here, and especially with how well he played in the playoffs last year, I think he's kind of earned a bigger role for the Clippers. So I do like Westbrook at 6,500. He's probably my favorite play on the Clippers, followed by Kawhi, followed by PG. Zubac is another guy that has upside, but you never know the minutes with Zubac. Plus, he has a backup in Mason Plumlee, who they're going to give minutes to. And if Zubac and Plumlee are going to be splitting the center minutes, I just don't think I'm going to go to either one of those guys on a 12-game slate. I think that's it, guys. I think that's it for the Clippers, and I think that's it for this 12-gamer. I know this video was long, man. It's about 45 minutes, but again, guys, want to try and give you as much information. Hopefully, as the season progresses, I'll get better at making these videos a lot faster. But at the beginning of the season, I feel like you do need to kind of talk more about starting lineups and stuff like that. But again, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Appreciate you watching. As always, hit that like button if you guys enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to go check out PrizePicks. Again, PrizePicks is the sponsor of this video. You guys can sign up for PrizePicks, linked down below in the description, or just when you signed up, make sure to use promo code NOAH. You will get your first deposit matched up to $100 when you sign up for PrizePicks with my promo code. Whew! I got to drink me some water, guys. That was a long one. But man, appreciate you guys watching. Best of luck on this 12-game slate. Hope you guys all win some money tonight, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.